Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The fellas are talking our Michigan Wolverines heading into the 2023 season, specifically taking a look at this offense, which has kind of been the storyline of the offseason is how can this offense take that step? And when you look at the numbers, this Michigan offense was pretty damn good, right? Top 6 in scoring at 40 points per game, top 20 in yards per game. That being said, I think us as Michigan fans and a lot of Michigan fans we've been talking with kind of feel like this offense can take another step in 2023. Now, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and especially the Michigan fans. You all know there's nothing my brother and I love talking more than Michigan football. The Michigan fans that have been showing love, supporting the boys. Can't thank you guys enough. If you do enjoy the content and you want to support the fellas, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys like you do, Dill. I'm going to kick this one off to you and kind of an open-ended question, and we've been talking a lot about this process of how does Michigan get better in 2023? How does Michigan win a national championship in 2023? It starts in January, the day after we lost to TCU, and we've been talking about it for months. I'm going to kick it off to you here. Your number one thing for this Michigan offense to take a step in 2023.
Yeah, and this is obviously not like a hot take or anything, but it will be, can the passing game just get a little more explosive? And that was the issue last year in my mind is, yeah, it's great to be able to run the ball. And you look at what Michigan added in the transfer portal and kept from the NFL draft up front, along with that, the running back position, they're going to be able to run the ball really effectively. It will be, can JJ kind of come into his own and play like a first-round caliber quarterback?
Yeah, and I mean, you see some buzz about JJ. Like, I mean, there's some people having him as a top 10 pick.
Jim called him Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen.
I'm all for it. And then JJ goes, I want to be better than Pat Mahomes, which I absolutely love. And I think we all agree. JJ's the guy. And the biggest storyline that we've kind of been talking about is this is his team now. Like 12 months ago, he was in camp battling out for the quarterback one spot with Caden McNamara. He had offseason surgery last year, so he wasn't in for spring ball. Like, everything leads to kind of taking that step. And like, I feel like some fans were kind of critical of Michigan's attempt to push the ball down the field. I thought we did that, especially early in the year. I think a lot of times it was just the throws were just a little bit off. And when those plays are there, when you play good teams, you're not going to get those throws every single time. But when you do have those throws, you need to hit them. JJ missed a few early on in the season. I think it got better, but I think that's the storyline is just hitting those plays and kind of finding wide receivers who can really get down the field and kind of make those plays.
And frankly, to me, what's most encouraging is I thought in the Purdue game and the TCU game, along with the Ohio State game, of course, that was really good football from J.J. McCarthy and the wideouts. And especially the TCU game, I mean, hitting those longer throws, not necessarily like straight up go balls that are open down the field. It's hitting those 20-yard intermediate passes very consistently, hitting them over and over, especially when the run game wasn't really humming like we were kind of accustomed to seeing it. So that to me is what's most encouraging is he got better. You give him a whole offseason healthy, being the number one guy. Now it's time to go. I mean, just play like the modern day NFL.
What you're talking about, JJ, and the throws, like I love how you saw a variety of different throws. Like he has the arm strength to absolutely rip it in if he needs to put some mustard on it. But in terms of layering throws, having some of that touch, I think that was probably the aspect that you wanted to see come along a little bit more. And I thought you saw that. Like, again, the last 3 games, Ohio State, Purdue, TCU, you take away that one pick 6 he threw against TCU. Like, those are the 3 best games we saw from J.J. McCarthy. I kind of want to talk about the pass catchers a little bit. I've been a little critical of Michigan in the receiving game a little bit. Who's your guy? And outside of Cornelius Johnson, like who's your guy that you're kind of looking to take that step in 2023?
Well, and honestly, to me, I don't know that like you necessarily know. It's like Roman Wilson when he's on the field is solid for sure, and he plays good football. Obviously, has deep speed, but in terms of stepping up and being like a real next level star, I frankly think it's going to come from Clemens or Morris, and I don't know which one's going to break through. We obviously haven't seen it yet, but these are 2 young players with an abundance of talent. I'm looking for one of those 2 to kind of step up and be that number 2 who is consistently winning their matchups, which, again, we just weren't doing enough outside of Cornelius Johnson, who, again, he could get his. Ronnie Bell could get his. But aside from those 2, on the edge, you just didn't have anyone winning enough, I didn't think.
Yeah, and this might be a hot take. I'm actually Michigan fans. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think of this. I don't think it's crazy to say Darius Clemens or Tyler Morris are probably the two most talented wide receivers on this team, and that's really not a knock on Cornelius Johnson or Roman Wilson, but like even a guy in Marvin Harrison Jr. as a true freshman like didn't really play much for Ohio State. So just because you haven't heard of Darius Clemens or Tyler Morris much making plays, like I really do think heading into year 2, those guys could be kind of taking that step. But I also want to talk about another guy who's heading into year 2, who if he takes another step, you're looking at one of the best players in the country at the position. That's Colston Loveland at the tight end spot.
Yeah, and we talk about like the red zone struggles, obviously, for
That's
Michigan.
what I want to talk about. Yeah,
that's been a very much a sore spot. And I mean, with him and Barner, especially, I mean, Loveland looks like he might be one of those like real difference special maker or difference makers.
Yes.
He's that type of guy, and that's again, I don't worry. Michigan, like they always move the ball in between the 20-yard lines, if you will. It was very much a lot of the issues came in the red zone, and to me, it's like why AJ Barner and Colston Loveland have to go be stars. They need to make a lot of plays in that area.
Yeah, the red zone struggles are interesting, and on paper, it's like the red zone struggles weren't that bad because we didn't turn the ball over inside the 20, but we didn't score touchdowns. So you look at our red zone percentage scoring, we're in the 90. I mean, we're top 5 in the country, top 10 in the country. The problem is when you dig deeper and look at our touchdown percentage in the red zone, 65%. That's 58th nationally. I mean, we're a top 2 team in the country last year in the power rankings, and we're brutal in the red zone in terms of scoring touchdowns. And you saw that bite us in the butt a lot. And again, in that TCU game, fumbling on the goal line, fourth and not converting on fourth down inside the 20, settling for field goals. It's really hard to beat the top. Like, we're going to be a top team in the country regardless if we score touchdowns or not in the red zone. You want to go beat Georgia. You want to beat Ohio State again. You want to beat a team like TCU in the college football playoffs. Those they need to be touchdowns. Because when you're playing an elite team on the other side of the ball, you don't have time to score 3 points. That's really a failure of a possession.
Yeah, and that's what we talk about. Like it feels like they should have the unit to do it. They have a mobile quarterback who, again, showed his abilities in the red zone at times to go do it with his legs. It feels like they have the tools. I don't know if it's a scheme thing. If I could diagnose it, like, well, they'd probably pay me.
They'd be paying you the big bucks.
Offensive coordinator. Obviously, I'm sitting here just chatting it up about it. So I don't necessarily know, but like you gotta hope they fix it because that was the one issue. You saw it. It came close against Penn State to being a very real problem. Came close against Michigan State to being a real problem. Now Michigan was a better team than those teams last year, so they were able to overcome it. But you're right. When it got into TCU, that cost them the game. So it does need to get fixed. I don't necessarily know how. It feels like we have the players to do it.
Yeah, I have like 3 things about red zone and how it might get better. Because when you look at the personnel, it's like, yeah, we do have the personnel to do so. We have a quarterback that can run, that can extend plays. That always helps in the red zone. You have a run game, and a lot of times when you see teams struggle scoring touchdowns in the red zone, it's because they can't run the football. They're primarily pushing the ball vertically down the field. And when there's not that much room to operate down in the red zone, you don't have your full route trees, and you can't run the football, that's when you struggle. I think that because we don't have those problems. Our problem, I think, is, and I'd be interested to hear what Michigan fans think, is you have to throw with a little bit more anticipation in the red zone. Like the windows, you got to throw guys open. They're not going to be open. You're not going to see them open and then throw it. Those throwing windows are pretty close. You got to be perfect with those windows. J.J. McCarthy, I think it's important, although he doesn't act like a sophomore last year. He was a second-year guy, first-year starter, and sometimes throwing with some of that anticipation wasn't really there. So I wonder if there's an element of, okay, JJ getting another year under his belt, kind of having a little bit more confidence in throwing to stuff that's not maybe open right now, but throwing guys open. Because, again, we can run the football. You have a dominant offensive line. You have 2 really, really good tight ends in A.J. Barner and Colston Loveland, and we had Scooney last year. It should get better. Now, the last thing that I guess 2 more things why we're talking Michigan offense taking that step. You have the explosive passing game. You have the red zone. Still, I think not being healthy at running back last year was something that's massively overlooked. I mean, we had Donovan Edwards was extremely banged up, and although he was kind of a hero in Ohio State, Purdue, TCU, he was not healthy. Now you have Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum healthy, and if they stay healthy down the stretch, I think this Michigan team is vastly different than what we saw down the stretch last year.
And that was like Blake Corum taking 35 carries or whatever it was against Maryland in week 4 or whatever. Like that just can't happen. They need to be able to be a little more balanced with who touches the ball because, again, you need Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards playing their absolute best down the stretch. That's when it matters. Like Michigan shouldn't be in nail biter games against Maryland early. And they need someone to emerge. I frankly think they need a third guy to step it up, and whether that's Benjamin Hall, whether that's
Cole Cabana, you have a bunch of guys, Kalel Mullings, like there's a bunch of guys, but last year, like they're just like when CJ Stokes fumbled, like he kind of lost the trust of the staff, and so it was like Donovan Edwards was hurt. Okay, Blake Corum is going to touch the ball every single play for us, which
it can't happen, like because it's too good. It's like Michigan should be able to trot out a running back who's not at those two guys' level, which no one really is, and still be fine. They still should be able to move the ball, run their offense because it's too good of a team to not be able to do that against Maryland. And you're right. They didn't seem to have confidence in any back besides those two to take a lot of snaps. So against Illinois, like the offense just changed and it stagnated. To me, I think it's going to be crucial to have one of those third guys step up and just be dependable enough to keep the train on the tracks. They don't need to be stars. They just got to be able to take some of the load off the two big dogs because those two carry a lot. They touch the ball a lot. They have to touch the ball a lot, and they need to be healthy.
And at the end of the day, it's like you're not worried about like you should be taking care of business against those teams early in the schedule, especially with how our schedule looks like. And I don't really need Blake Corum taking much more than 20 carries and Donovan Edwards taking much more than 20 carries against those teams because when does our season matter really? Is when we're playing Ohio State at the end of November, when we're playing for a Big Ten championship and then playing for national championships in December. Like that's when you need those guys 100%. Now, the last reason, and another thing that I think is underrated is like, okay, back-to-back Joe Moore awards. I think this offensive line gets kind of meaningfully better. You return everybody from last year. I think you have the best interior offensive line in the whole entire country. Drake Nugent coming in. Trevor Keegan, Zach Zinner, probably the two best guard combos in the country. Two guys that would have been day 2 draft picks last year. But I think the big storyline is, and this is no knock on Carson Barnhart, Trente Jones, like solid offensive tackles in the Big Ten. I think you might take a massive, massive step up with the tackle play heading into 2023.
And that's, I think, what you're really excited about because I think you're right. Like the interior offensive line with replacing Olu with Nugent, who, again, they're just, they feel like carbon copies.
Yeah, it's like plug and play, like veteran centers.
Smaller schools, smart, played a lot of football, played really good football. So you're getting him. And now I think you have a more competitive, deeper tackle room. But also, like a guy like Miles Hinton, I mean, you just look at that body type. That's an NFL frame. Like maybe not the fleetest of foot, but big, strong, powerful player. Ladarius Henderson, kind of same thing. Played a lot of guard at Arizona State, but you look at the size, the physicality. They do what Michigan wants to do from an offensive standpoint. So I'm with you. I'm like just very excited. And again, if Barnhart or Trente Jones wins it, that to me says those two got a lot better and they're very much ready to rock and roll.
And that speaks to what Sharon Moore's doing. I mean, you won 2 Joe Moore awards the last 2 years, and we're heading into year 3, and we're talking about this offensive line even getting better than it was in the 2021 and 2022 season. And that's the identity of this team. Like that's how this offense runs through that offensive line. As much as we talked about passing game, red zone offense, the stuff we need to work on, like the stuff that like makes Michigan dominant is running the football and having an elite offensive line. And again, like closing it out, you look at the numbers, top 6 in points per game, top 20 in yards per play, and yards per game. Like this was a really good group. It was probably the second best team in the country last year, and it could get even better in 2023. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say in terms of how this Michigan offense gets better. Appreciate you guys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.